Next is the Objects tab. Here we have our select object, like over here. Then we also have our handles, the next button over. Below this we have our snapping options. Again, we have angle increment. Now we have mirroring. I'm just going to change resolution just to quickly clear the screen. What mirroring does is, let me change this to sphere. So right now you see that we have our tool in the center. We have our axes. Oops. Now, depending on what we want to do, certain operations like the directional smooth, we could use mirror in the X and mirror in the Y, mirror in the Z to get different orientations of the tool. Now in this instance though, directional smooth isn't really doing anything because it's pretty much the same axis. It's just mirroring that axis. But when you start using different modes and things like that, it's you have these quick buttons just to quickly change the orientation, and that in unison with like your rotates, it becomes very handy. Below that we have options for moving our objects. It's a little bit more specific. So we have like identity and the planes and pivot and tool and grid. And what happens is that our target is what we want to have affect our currently selected object. So for instance, if I select camera and I hit, now not every button is going to have an effect depending on what you pick for target. But if I choose camera and then transform, you'll see that our axes changed. So we're aligning the axes to the view of the camera. And that's kind of how these other tools work. So if I pick grid here, oh, as you can see, our tool's gone. So the tool I believe is larger than the space because the camera was outside of the bounding box. But if we reset all this, our tool's back. So now if we have grid and we move a tool off the grid, and then we want to translate our selected object, which is the sphere tool, to our target, the grid, it'll snap it back down the grid. Now these are just simple explanations. You have lots of options, and there's many things you can do. And to best understand it, you should just play with it. We can also name these and save them as presets. Now I'm not sure if these presets persist after the program is closed. Next tab is View. View controls our camera. Free rotate is the option I don't like. This is default. So we select our vertical Z or vertical rotate. We also have default camera settings, top, bottom, left, right, front, back. Rendering, this is interesting. Let's add some clay. Okay, so we have our clay. So with show clay outline, when that's selected, we're going to get a white line that shows where the clay intersects with the grid. And this is active. So if I select the grid, we'll see it update in real time where the clay interacts with the grid. It's pretty fun to play with. Draw translucent. So when that's active, we can actually see through the clay. Every piece of clay in the bounding box, and now you can see that we have two pieces of clay, but every piece of clay in the bounding box is considered one object. So in regards to the draw clay translucent, it's going to draw every piece translucent. We can hide the grid. When you start working in a model that is pretty detailed, and most of the time you're sticking to the surface, you can just get rid of that so it's out of the way. One thing though is that you could be working and the tool still reacts to the grid as if it's there. So most of the time you'll just want to move this out of the way and hide it. And then you can work without it being a hindrance. See right here, it's hitting the grid. Now you can hide everything and go into what I like to call a showcase mode. So all you see is your work. Next option I like to use is you can spin your model automatically. And this slide over here indicates dead zero, and then you can rotate it in either way. And the further you get out from the center is the faster it rotates. And then you can rotate the other way. I like to use that with showcase mode. That way it auto rotates on its own. You can also add shininess. When you get into a high resolution model, it's much easier to see when you have a high shininess. It shows off a lot of the little details. You can also change the color. Now again, with draw clay translucent, color is applied to every piece of clay within the bounding box. So you can't have a multicolored clay object. It's all one color. Down below shows our quad count. So when you're working and you notice that your computer is really bogging down, you can look here and start to see how big your model is and how it's affecting your computer. Input, you don't need to know. And that's our side menu.